it. But on that same thing, if I may ask a question, I've read a lot about you and stuff out there and so on, and one of the articles I read that said when you were a minister, you only voted in 2 primary elections. One you voted as a Democrat, one you voted as a Republican. And the reason that you quit voting, if I remember the article correctly, it's been a while back, but you did not want to influence your congregation with your vote. But, I mean, how do they... I mean, you can vote without your congregation knowing, I guess. But help me understand that.
Well, you can. You're right. You can. I am very sensitive. We have different communities in the state of South Carolina, and they handle this type of matter quite differently. And there are those in the state who will stand in their pulpits and say, you need to vote for Billy Smith for auditor. I am uncomfortable with that. I'm uncomfortable with that because I think a pastor has a responsibility to his congregation to lay out the principles of appropriate voting. But to say I'm actually voting for Billy Smith, I don't think is appropriate. Because there are people, y'all, there are people who will, because I've been at their bedsides, because I've baptized their families, because I've taken their marriages, they love me. They love me. They'll do anything I ask them to do. And I just think it would be unfair advantage. I just think it would be inappropriate to do that. Now, if you go listen to my sermons,
I've listened to some.
Okay, then you will hear America red, white, and blue all over them. But you won't hear me say vote for Mitt Romney or vote for John McCain or vote for George Bush.
And my concern was, why did you not vote at all? I mean, I'm not saying what you
Yes, ma'am.
preached in your sermons to your congregation, and I don't have a problem with that, but why did you not vote?
Well, I did vote, but I didn't vote in primaries.
Okay.
And the reason I didn't is if you live in Columbia and you've been preaching there 20 years and you practiced law there 20 years, you know a lot of people. And if I walk into and I'm going to call it the Republican booth, they will say, oh, he's a Republican. If I walk into them, they would say the same thing. So what I did not want to do is I did not want to move anyone toward either field. It's just my own conscience, and I understand how people disagree with me. I've had people disagree vehemently with me, and I understand the disagreement. But I would never impose on someone else because of their love for me to vote in a primary. I wouldn't ask them to vote for me personally, merely because of their love.
Well, if we're your congregation and you go to D.C., what are you going to do as far as voting?
I'm going to vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act.
Well, I know on that. Anyway, I've probably asked enough questions.
No, that's fine. Yes, ma'am.
At the Senator Forum last week, you said that you supported amnesty. Would you explain?
Oh, no.
That's what we heard.
Oh, no. The question went all the way around amnesty. I am opposed to amnesty, period, end of statement. Then the next question was, though, if we secure the borders, if we can secure the borders, then what do you do? So it was a hypothetical, and so understand, I've got something to do once you secure the borders, but it is not to give an illegal alien amnesty.
Do you have a plan?
Yes, ma'am, I do. After you secure the borders. Is there anyone in here? Yes, sir.
Question. What is your policy on the problem with immigration then?
Okay.
The whole thing.
I'm going to get to it. But is there anyone in here who thinks I said I support amnesty? No. Good. Because it will be misinterpreted. I'm not in favor of amnesty. Period. End of statement. Now we go into a new paragraph. All right? Let's suppose the borders are secured. What do you do then? I mean, you got to do something. So what do? All right. The illegals, if they have committed additional illegal acts in the United States or in their own country, they're deported. All right? Secondly, there's full e-verification. Third, they pay a fine. Fourth, they pay back taxes. Fifth, they take a rigorous citizenship course. Sixth, English becomes their primary language. Seventh, they have a work visa. 8, they have no voting rights whatsoever. They do not get Pell Grants for their children. They get none of the benefits that United States citizens get. Let's see how long they'll stay. But
You just want to force them to deportate themselves.
you take away all the magnets and you will be amazed at what happens.
They complain of creeping.
You just take away all the magnets, which is the reason they're coming.
Paying for all of that.
I think that should have answered your question pretty well. Is there another question?
Yes, sir.
Why is it that law that you choose to allow people to disobey?
Oh, I don't.
We have a law of the land,
Yes, sir.
and if you don't support sending them back across the border because they crossed it illegally, you're allowing them to break the law with all these other conditions, admittedly, but you're still allowing them to break the law.
If you leave here today and you get in your vehicle and you drive down the highway and you drive in 65 and a 45, you just broke the law. What happens? They don't put you in jail. We pay a fine. Now, I didn't say what the fine was. I don't know what a reasonable fine is, but it would be high. So if they're going to stay here, it's going to cost them severely. What is not practical is you're not going to go and find 11.4 million people and pick them up in a helicopter and carry them and drop them off somewhere. That's not going to happen. So at some point, you've got to be pragmatic. Again, they don't get any of the rights that you have.
Why should we have any confidence that anybody's going to enforce that?
Well, I don't think they will under the present regime. I don't think you're going to have it with the present United States Senate or with the present president. I don't think it's going to happen because they don't want any of them deported. They want more to come in. So I don't think it will happen.
So let me ask you this. If you were elected to the Senate, looking at the Senate now, who would you say your chief allies would be in the Senate?
Tim Scott. I mean, that would be my chief ally. I'd go straight to Senator Scott, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee. Those would be the gentlemen that I would go to and say, come on, I need some help. How do we pull it all together and make it all work?
I want to ask you this about Tim Scott. I've seen him and
Graham.
What's that?
Graham.
Graham, yeah. Him and Graham on a TV commercial together. Now that concerns me. I supported Tim Scott.
Well, don't blame Senator Scott for that. That is not Senator Scott's fault. That is beware of manipulation. Just beware of manipulation. That's not Senator Scott. So don't.
Well, he shouldn't let himself get caught in that mess.
Well, sir, you know, Mike Huckabee got caught in that mess, and it was a pushback. But don't blame Senator Scott, really. I mean, he is a good man. He's doing what we need.
Can she tell us any more about it?
I'd kind of like to keep the questions focused on Mr. Bowers' positions rather than Senator Scott's right now.
Yeah, okay.
If we get time later, we can ask her if she would like to dwell on it, but I'd kind of like to just get his position.
Thanks, sir. Yes, sir.
We have our current tax system, and we have several that people talk about a lot. What particular one would you support?
Our tax system has not been overhauled since 1986.
It's overhauled almost every year.
Well, you're right. I agree.
I have done taxes myself, corporate and individual. This is the single hardest year I've ever done taxes.
I agree with your sentiment. If give me the magic wand, I'd do away with all taxes on capital gains, dividends, and interest. I'd do away with the estate tax, the death tax. I think the estate tax is particularly opprobrious. I think in the law, I practiced law for 20 years. Still am an attorney. But in the law, we have what's called double jeopardy. And you can never try a person for the same offense twice. With the estate tax, what you do is you tax that money twice. As you know, you made the money to build the estate. Then when you die, it gets taxed all over again. That's just amoral.
The only thing that changes that is the administration. Every
Agreed.
1 or 2 or 4 years. They change it this year, and next year they revert back. that's no good. Would you repeal the tax amendment?
When I repeal the tax amendment, the 16th Amendment, I would vote for it to be repealed. I don't know.
Propose it.
Sponsor it.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I mean, I really have not thought about that. I am opposed. I am much more in favor of a consumer tax than I am in a regressive income tax.
Flat tax, fair tax, what do you think?
Yeah, a consumer tax. I mean, when you go to buy that vehicle or you go to buy that meal, it's added right there. You know exactly what it costs, and everybody has to pay it. I think that is the fairest tax that you can have.
Would you support changing the manipulations of the judicial system and the way it's used in the courts? I'm talking about going from a 12-man jury. Everybody has to be there. I mean, there's cases right now that I know that's been in the court. My brother's got one. He's been there for 4 years. It's a simple dollar and cents thing. It can be settled in 30 minutes. But it's been there 4 years.
I think we've got the best I think we've got the best trial by jury system in the world.
The laziest
The delays are oftentimes caused by insurance companies.
one. I know that.
So, I mean, that's...
Somebody got to push the button.
Regarding immigration again, so you are for legalization but not citizenship, that's correct?
I'm not in favor of amnesty.
Are you in favor of legalization but not citizenship, is that correct or not?
I don't know what the definition of legalization is.
Legalization means that you're not a citizen, but that we're going to allow you to stay here legally.
I don't...
That's a big difference.
Yes, I understand. I don't think it's practical. I'm not avoiding the question, but I'm answering it with a little greater fullness. I don't think that it's practical to expect the United States government to deport everyone who...
That's not what I asked. Legalization versus citizenship. Okay, let me just take it one step further. That is, if these people are left to be here legally, which I'm not saying I'm against that. I understand it's impossible to deport all these people, and as you said, you like Romney's position of self-deportation. But how about older families? There's millions and millions of more people who are liable to be, our government is going to allow all their families, relatives, cousins, aunts, everybody to come in. We're talking about tens of millions of additional people. What's your position on that?
And I think what you may be talking about is chain immigration, I think is what it's called.
So,
I am opposed to that. I'm opposed to that. Yes, sir.
I think I can blend the questions. Number one is, I think you're saying if you had a magic wand, you'd have these 7 or 8 things. Now, let's say you've got the magic wand, you have the 7 or 8 things. Second, you're against immigration sweeps of neighborhoods to just pick people up. What happens if there's the traffic stop that Joe asked about, and the people are illegal? What happens to them? In other words, what happens to illegals that are picked up in the course of legitimate law enforcement activity, not involving immigration? It's like the South Carolina law that Obama was
What would be the options? I mean, if for example, if a person's driving down the street...
Well, you can jail them, you can deport them, or you can release them. What do you do? Because you caught someone who has violated the immigration laws and
Right.
here illegally. You didn't catch them for that reason. You caught them for an unrelated
Right.
thing. What do you do with your immigration violations?
They've broken the law.
So what do you do?
Well, you either deport them or you put them in jail, depending on the law. Now, if you're talking about a traffic offense, they've still broken the law. I would side on the side of deportation anytime there's a question.
Sure. But if I get pulled over here for running a red light and I've got a bench warrant from New Jersey, the cops will transport me to New Jersey after
Right.
an extradition. Using that analogy, what do you do if you've got an illegal that's stopped in a traffic light situation?
I don't think it makes any difference how it's found out. I mean, if you catch him in a traffic stop or any other way and he's illegal, then he needs to be treated as an illegal. Yes, sir?
To change the subject ever so much for a minute, how do you feel about a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution? And in regards to budgets, a lot of times since House appropriates spending, those bills come over, but, and I'm going to pick on Reed, but it was also done up under Newt, where they would just gut the thing and stick in a total different bill so that they could say, okay, the House approved 1, 2, 3, but now it's a total different. The healthcare bill came through that way. It was a total different bill of 23 pages that turned into 2,400 pages of monstrosity. Balanced budget, and would you fight hard to keep them from doing just that, gutting appropriation bills and making them something they weren't when they came from the House?
Yeah, I do. And yes. I mean, the short answer is yes, I agree with what you said. Yeah, I mean, one of the difficulties is they put things in bills that have nothing to do with that bill. And that's just inappropriate. It's just hiding. And that doesn't work good. We need transparency. And character determines what will occur, whether it's the United States Senate or whether it's the President or any other office. You know, the folks y'all should vote for are those you deem to have the purest character. Because then you will get what you want. You just will. If you want to change, if it's ABC Corporation, and you want to change that corporation, you don't change it by hiring another fellow who's sweeping the floor. The fish stinks from the head. I mean, you start at the head, that's where it needs to be changed. But it's going to be changed by character. Who is it that you will elect that what they want is what's best for the state of South Carolina, not what will get them reelected? That's the people you vote for. Yes, ma'am?
I have one other question, and I hate I've asked so many, but...
Well, you have such a lovely button on that you get to ask any question you want.
Okay, Liz Lindsay, right? I listened to a radio show that you did up in Lancaster with Swain Shepherd and Chris Thompson. And I remember at the end of that particular one, you were asked what were the top 5 things that you thought that Lindsay had done that were part of the worst he had done. And on that particular interview, you said, I'm not going to answer that because I'm not running against Senator Graham. I'm running for the people of the United States. If asked that question today, does that still stand? Or?
Well, it depends on where the question's asked. If you ask me, am I running against Lindsey Graham, my answer is no.
What are the top 5 things?
Now that I'll answer.
Okay, because you didn't back then.
But that wasn't the way they asked the question back then. They asked it in a different way than you did. They asked it, it was coupled with running against Lindsey Graham. I'm not an against person. I'm a for person. I'm a hope person. I'm a positive person. But I'll draw the distinctions. But I'm going to draw the distinctions without, one day I'm going to stand before a holy God. And everything I say about somebody else, I'm going to be held accountable for. I will not be elected to office by tearing somebody down. That's just not my nature. That's not who I am. Okay? Now, let me answer the question. Let me answer the question. This is where we would disagree. It's an ideological divide. We would not agree. I would never vote to raise the debt ceiling 16 times. That's a significant difference. Number 2, I would have never voted for Sotomayor or Kagan. And both of them, but Kagan in particular, when she was the dean at Harvard, she did not allow the ROTC to recruit on Harvard's campus. Now, how do you think she's going to vote on military issues? We lose. We lose. Number 3, the NSA. The government's got no business with my records. Y'all, the 4th Amendment was not written to protect criminals. It was written to protect us. That is an unreasonable search and seizure. Now, if the government wants my phone records, they can get a warrant under the 14th Amendment They can get, via due process, they can get a warrant and get my records, but they have to show probable cause. So there is a judicious way to do it, and y'all, the government's got more judges in their pockets than we can count. They can get a warrant, but they need to stop abusing the 4th and the 14th Amendment. I would have never voted for Senator Clinton to be the Secretary of State, nor would I have voted for Eric Holder to be the Attorney General. The 82nd Attorney General of the United States of America has done more to destroy the separation of powers and the rule of law than 81 of them put together. I just wouldn't have ever voted for either one of them. And someone might say, but Dad, you don't understand. You didn't know what Eric Holder was going to do. Y'all, I practiced law for 20 years. All you got to do is look at someone's client list, and you're going to know what they're going to do. Look at his client list. Look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg's client list. I mean, we know how they're going to vote. So we just have, Senator Graham and I have an ideological divide at that point. I don't question his motives. I don't question him. We are just different. We're going to come down different on those issues. So thank you for asking.
Do you support term limits?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we go back a second? I think I counted 3.
I don't know.
NSA and the Supreme Court.
Clinton and Holder.
Clinton and Holder were 4 and 5, I think. 4 and 5.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, we've got time for 2 more questions, and I'm going to take the last one. Is any other questions out there?
Term limits. I'm in favor of term limits. I'll hold myself to 2 even if they don't.
Good. We wouldn't be in this mess we have now.
You're right. Yes, sir.
Would you oppose Sharia law in the United States?
Yes, sir. I would oppose that. Yes.
Do you think that's a federal issue or a state issue?
I think if it's brought up in the federal courts, it's federal. If it's brought up in state courts, it's state. But I think it needs to be opposed at every level. Would I support Sharia law? And the Supreme Court has used nuances of Sharia law in some of their, not the Supreme Court, but the federal judiciary has. And that is wrong.
Let me just take the last question, then we're about running out of time there. But could you just give us an overview on your thoughts about the Middle East and funding various nation states over there, and where you stand on that?
Yes, sir. Foreign policy. America comes first.
All right.
If we cannot afford it, we don't do it.
Amen.
Unless there's a very clear mission statement before you get into an engagement that tells you how to get out of it, you don't get into it. We are excellent at starting a war. We are horrible at ending one. They just become political. I think there ought to be sunset legislation on all foreign aid. Whatever's given, is given for a year. And then it's got to come back up for a vote. And justified.
There you go.
Y'all, what wars do is they grow a bureaucracy. We cannot afford to continue to grow our bureaucracy. Now, if it's a justifiable war, we understand we'll be the first one in line. But we cannot afford, take the present situation. Germany is much more threatened than we are. But what's Germany doing? Germany wants Russia's oil. So Germany's trying to play both sides of the aisle. No. We always seem to be the primary sacrificers. That's not fair to America. And we got to be fair to those we send over there. They're coming back in not the best shape, and we're not treating them right when they come back. And we cannot afford to continue to hurt our populace for those who don't want our freedoms. And we continue to try to impose our freedoms on them. They don't want our freedoms. So I am, I'm much more conservative on that. So, and that would be another area that would be a difference between Senator Graham and me as well.
Okay.
you, sir.
We're about out of time, but we want to certainly thank you for taking the time to drive down to Columbia and talk to us. Give